Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle in the series Freemasonry and Satanism, series number 62. Wow. The Blue Lodge Handbook was 61, and I made 12 videos, about 2 hours each. That's 24 hours of video. And I think there are some simple conclusions from those 12 videos, 24 hours. One is, if we read the initiation rites, ritual that they do with the Freemasons, it was focused towards Jerusalem, King Solomon, King Solomon's temple. No doubt about it. And I've been doing other homework on other videos and other books, and I come across certain terms, which I don't create, some of them. Some I do create some certain terms, but apparently I was watching Tex Mars today, and one of his videos made it pretty clear that Freemasonry is a Jewish organization created. Now, do all the lower level Freemasons know this? No. But it's also pretty clear that they have banned any mention of Jesus. The Freemasons had a magazine called The New Age, and if you read The New Age, Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, published by Lucifer Trust, and years later they changed the name to Lucas Trust. So you can see that Freemasonry is a Jewish organization. Worldwide, we looked at those New Age magazines. There's a lodge of one brand or another: York Rite, Scottish Rite, Knights of Columbus, many Rosicrucians, many different names. And it seems that you could just as well call them organizations of witchcraft, the occult, Kabbalah, which we know, if anybody's done any research at all into anything, that the Jewish people have a long history of the Kabbalah and these certain things, even putting curses and hexes on people. Crazy. And throughout the 2,000 years history that I have studied, during the Crusades, it was Jewish people who were the finance managers and procurement officers getting supplies for war, were Jewish people. A lot of them lived in Vienna, Venetians they were called, and kings, queens, empires, Caesars, Vatican. And then when Tex Mars also sent me the pamphlet one day saying that most CEOs for a lot of the largest corporations in the world were Jewish people, I balked at that. I said, come on, how can that be? 1%, 2% of the population? And so I looked it up. I got a binder, and I looked up all the major corporations, went on Wikipedia, and yes, in fact, they were, for the most part, all Jewish. Google's Eric Schmidt caught my attention, and I have a habit of putting names in the 666 calculator, and lo and behold, Eric Schmidt was 666. Kissinger, who has been indicted by several countries for crimes against humanity, I guess being responsible for killing lots of people, his name, Kissinger, is 666 in the 666 numerology calculator you can find online. So it just seems to me that I'm starting to put this together, and I promised 2 videos, number 60, that I would do the Blue Lodge Handbook, and then I would do H.G. Wells. And I have been reading and investigating, and as usual, I surprise myself how much this fits in line with everything I'm saying. The Open Conspiracy and Other Writings by H.G. Wells. (1928) and then 1930 it was revised. So he was a fairly well-known man. And I've been doing some reading. We'll get to that. So I thought I'd take a look at the index. The Open Conspiracy. Remember, this is 1930, 1928. After World War I. I think the Russian Revolution was 1917. And went on for 10 years. So 1927 or longer. Killing good people, Christians. Tearing down the Christian churches, but not the Jewish temples. It's important. And the Bolsheviks, and much of the people in charge of Russia during the revolution, where they killed 66 million people, plus or minus, were Jewish people. Karl Marx was Jewish. All these people were Jewish. It was a Jewish-driven thing with money and banks. I mean, look at the timing. In 1913, December 22nd, Woodrow Wilson, president, co-conspired with a couple of members of Congress, Senator Hyde and others, who met at Jekyll Island, get it, Jekyll and Hyde, and created something called the Federal Reserve, which was a financial institution, private by the way, not federal, owned by the Rothschilds, Bank of Germany, Bank of England. So at that day, in 1913, in December 22nd, in essence, they took over the United States. Because as Mr. Rothschild says, I care not who the president is or who rules countries, as long as I control the money. Because if you control the money, you control the populations and the president and everything that a country does. That they can't do without borrowing money from you. And if you're a satanic Illuminati, Freemasonic, or Zionist organization, like the Rothschilds are, anybody can read up on that, these evil men controlled the U.S. when they did that in 1913, December 22nd. I keep saying that date for a reason, because 6 months later in June, they started World War I. So 1914, 6 months later. So they had to take over the USA money supply in order to even start World War I. And World War I went on for 1914, 1915, 1916. And around 1917, Russia was weakened enough that they infiltrated Russia with some spies and people who assassinated the Tsar of Russia. And they took over the vast continent portion where Russia is, and I believe that they've never given that up. And all the hocus pocus going on with Putin, Obama, Bush, the UK, China, they're all in cahoots to create a new world order. And by doing these books I've been doing, reviews and document reviews, I believe I've proven it. And I think we're going to prove it even more with H.G. Wells, The Open Conspiracy, and Other Writings by H.G. Wells. The Present Crisis in Human Affairs. The idea of an open conspiracy. That's where all these people, and remember this was after World War I, and they did want to create a world organization to rule the world through these Rothschild, satanic, Illuminati, Zionist, evil folks. So they create a worldwide organization and everybody submits to it, but they control it. And they called it the League of Nations. But it failed to fall under their complete control. and the Balfour Agreement that Rothschild had with the Mr. Balfour of the UK, United Kingdom, fell through the floor. They had made a deal that if the Rothschilds, with his money, helped the UK with the war with Germany, that the London, the UK, would help Rothschild annex the Palestinians' land to create the state of Israel. So after World War I, Mr. Balfour, well, the UK backed up on that, failed to follow through, and hence World War II was needed. And so they disregarded the League of Nations, and after World War II, of course, they created the United Nations, which did fall under their complete control. All right, we have to clear and clean up our minds. A revolution in education. Religion in the New World. Even the Pope now is saying we're having a one-world religion. Modern religion is objective. What mankind has to do. Broad characteristics of a scientific world commonwealth. No stable utopia is now conceivable. The open conspiracy is not to be thought of as a single organization. It is a conception of life out of which efforts, organizations, and new orientations will arise. So as I keep saying, in 1913, they created the Federal Reserve. 6 months later started World War I and dragged the United States into it. President Wilson lied to the people. And then in 1917, they, of course, did the Russian Revolution, killed 66 plus or minus million people. 66 million, I say that because you can look online and find documents with reports with 66 million named. And I believe the Israeli press newspapers have admitted to 20 million Christians and other good people, unwanted people, non-Jewish people, people who were not productive. And all this seems to be something looming, possibly, in the United States, coming to a neighborhood near you and me soon, as we will see in this video. The resistance of the less industrialized peoples to the drive of the open conspiracy. Resistance and antagonistic forces in our conscious and unconscious selves. The open conspiracy begins as a movement of discussion, education, explanation, and propaganda. Early constructive work of the open conspiracy, existing and developing movements which are contributory to the open conspiracy and which must develop a common consciousness, the parable of Provider Island. The creator home, social group, and school, the present waste of the idealistic will. Progressive development of the activities of the open conspiracy into a world control and commonwealth. The hazards of the attempt. Human life in the coming world community. Human life in the coming world community. 1930. So before I even start reading the book, which there's a lot here to go through, and I could read about the present crisis in human affairs, which is page 1 right there, but upon reading this book, some of it, I think I'll do the first last and the last first. How's that? Because I came across something that, well, blew my mind. And Petersburg in collapse. And I'll just read the first highlighted thing that I highlighted and come back and read some more highlighted portions of this Petersburg in collapse, which would of course be Petersburg, Russia, which I guess we could say was maybe one of the first countries overthrown for the New World Order. In January 1914, I visited Petersburg and Moscow for a couple weeks. In September 1920, I was asked to repeat this visit by Mr. Kalmanev, of the Russian trade delegation in London. So Mr. H.G. Wells was in Petersburg and Moscow in 1914, before the revolution. And then after the revolution in 1917, he went there in 1920. And he has a lot to say. So, but before I get to that, I'll look up a little document here about Mr. H.G. Wells. So this article, H.G. Wells, Prophet of the New World Order, April 30th, 2011, by Fritz Springmeier. We went over his book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. We did, in my last video, I think I referenced Fritz Springmeier's book 2 times in the 12 videos on the Blue Lodge Handbook of the Freemasonic Lodges. And we focused on the last video on the Russells of the 13 families of the Illuminati, which had everybody in there, including Bush and Clinton. Very interesting stuff, putting this together. Let me just tell you a little bit about something psychological that I have learned in this research. If somebody tells you something that's absurd, let's say the first time you heard the words, "I saw a UFO," you're going to laugh it off. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, you look at a magazine in the grocery store, and it says, "Man sights UFO." Now you've been hit with it twice. And you chuckle to yourself and go, "Oh, there it goes again." And here's the psychological part you probably don't know. A couple weeks later, somebody you know says, "Wow, my friend George saw a UFO." When it hits you 3 times, it's called predictive programming. So the first time you blew it off, second time you chuckled, the third time you're going to go, "Huh, must be something to that." The government uses predictive programming. And one of the things, so all these things that you think, there's too many people in the world. I challenge anybody to hop on a plane in Miami, Florida, and fly to Charlotte, North Carolina. 80–90% of your trip is going to be forest and rural farmland. The cities, they push people into there, and then without jobs even at factories now, it seems overcrowded. But it's by design. So now they say, because you're getting a traffic jam, or a lot of people at a grocery store, by design, they could have designed it differently, is what I'm saying. And all of Russia, all of Canada, vast forest, Maine, out west. I've been to New Mexico, Oklahoma, Tennessee. I've been to Mexico, Cozumel, Cancun, Costa Rica. And you can go on Google Earth. Most of the earth is uninhabited by mass amounts of people, rural people. So now when you hear the terminology, there's too many people, the overpopulated planet, sustainability, global warming, terrorism, you have been the victim of predictive programming by people who know how to feed you the tidbits in the news and magazines and the movies, the predictive programming, Hunger Games, Divergent, the comet hitting the earth, the core melting, all these movies, predictive programming. I hope I've said it more than 3 times, and you got it. Because we're going to get it when we read about H.G. Wells here, predictive programming. Wells psychologically conditioned the public to accept the stages of the New World Order as if they were self-evident. Predictive programming. That's what it says here. Fritz Springmeier's a smarter man than me. I mean, There's a lot of people who came before me, and then I've been reading books, why I do it this way. Book reviews, up to number 62 now. And some of the book reviews are 1 video, some are 3, some are 5. And the Blue Lodge Handbook was 10. 2 hours each, 24 hours of mixing together, showing you that Satanism, Judaism, Zionism, occultism, witchcraft, Freemasonic lodges, Illuminati, the Jesuits, Zionism, Israel. Israel flag has the 6-pointed star, which is witchcraft, magic. The hexagram, they call it. The witch's circle, which you get into to create magic. But a lot of people don't believe in magic. Go read some books, watch some TV shows, see the symbols of all the major corporations. Predictive programming. I guess you could say predictive programming is a bit of magic because you don't know what they're doing to you, but it is affecting you. So Fritz Springmeier for HenryMacau.com, and Henry Macau is a PhD Jewish author in Canada. And we went over his book in one of my videos, Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World. So Fritz Springmeier, a seriously educated and well-known famous man, wrote this article for HenryMacau.com, M-A-K-O-W, who wrote Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World. So 2 well-known, seriously educated authors produced this document. Fritz Springmeier did it for Henry Macau, and I'm sure Henry Macau read it, and probably if there was anything wrong or had to be added, he discussed it with Fritz Springmeier about H.G. Wells' Prophet of the New World Order. Sorry to drag on, but this is important. Is there any proof that events in the world are following a script? And without me going over all these book reviews that I've been going over, I think the answer is a resounding yes. Like the Rothschilds making a deal with Mr. Balfour, a leading citizen of the United Kingdom, London, that if they helped them with the money with the war with Germany, that then London, the UK, would help the Rothschilds get the Palestinians' land. And there's books, The Jewish State, written by Theodore Herschel, I went over, who was working at Rothschild's, one of his printing businesses. And Rothschild back then owned the courier service. They didn't have, of course, Federal Express and U.S. mail and stuff like that. It was by carriage or buggy, whatever. But the Rothschilds controlled the courier services. They could look in people's mail, business people's, king's people, the church people, and see what was being said. Spy. And of course today we have a whole new meaning to the concept of spying. Cell phones, computers, face recognition, cameras on every corner, scanning cards you use at the supermarket, credit cards. Now they're microchipping people and they want to force it on people. Well, I got to get to this H.G. Wells. And all this stuff is relevant I've been discussing in this H.G. Wells essay here, written by Fritz Springmeier for Henry Macau. So is there any proof that events in the world are following a script? I think most of us can agree, yes. The question has intrigued me because many people with inside knowledge have told me of attending meetings where the script of the future was outlined. 200-year plans, 40-year plans, 20, 10, and 5-year plans. The futuristic predictions of H.G. Wells, a socialist Masonic prophet, prove that indeed much more is contrived than the man on the street could imagine. Written in 1913, Wells, The World Set Free, predicted the use of atom bombs and the effect of nuclear war long before scientists considered the possibility. In other books, Wells said a new world order would come about by the elite controlling the air and sea lanes as well as energy production. So I suppose that's why we're never going to see free energy until they control the world. because as long as they control the energy, like here in the United States, they control the price of gas and everything else, they can suck the money right out of the citizenry. All of us. And with the sky spraying and the HARP system, microwave transmitters, I think they're destroying the environment, the bees, water, polluting it, trees, plants, drought, causing droughts, weather control. So they have to take away all of our resources and sources of food and water and energy, gas. They declare martial law, the grocery stores will close instantly. Gas stations will be closed. Nobody will be able to get money from their bank account. And they'll blame it all on some kind of terrorism. Maybe they'll do something freaky like a UFO alien attack. Comet going to hit Earth. Yellowstone blowing up. Russia threatening to nuke us. China threatening to invade us. I don't know. There's a dozen or more possibilities floating out there in the news every day. Planet X, Herculumbus, the Destroyer, Ebola, you got the point. Bird flu, they got 30 million chickens and turkeys recently slaughtered because supposedly they had the bird flu. How did they get the bird flu? When they're locked up in a big barn. They didn't fly out and go socialize with some other turkeys or chickens. So as you know, I only read the highlighted portions. So you can get this document. H.G. Wells, Prophet of the New World Order. That's, you Google or search that. You'll find this. For now, print it out, because also when they do martial law, the internet will be shut off. Your cell phone will be shut off. You won't be able to call your family and friends. They got Jade Helm going on right now, which is supposed to kick off on June 15th, and this is June 13th. I just told a neighbor of mine, I said, please go buy some water and groceries. Gas up your car. If you don't need the groceries, if you buy too much, Christmas time, donate it to the needy. It's better to be prepared. All right, not only did H.G. Wells predict modern warfare, the bombing of London, atom bombs, and the League of Nations stealth fighters over Iraq, and I'm just moving on here, as mapping out in detail how a new world order could be created, but he participated in causing events to take place. So he was active in and believed in this. He was the son of a servant to an elitist family, and he never wanted to be part of the working class that he was born of after living in that house of the elitist family. So the elitists took him in and trained him, and he became one of them. Freemason, Illuminati, New World Order conspirator, apparently, according to his own books. He was a major player to create the League of Nations. There you go. When the Russian Revolution occurred, H.G. Wells, who was known simply as H.G., went to Russia to trade ideas with Lenin on how to follow up the revolution to create a new world order. They disagreed and parted disliking each other. The disagreement stemmed over H.G.'s vision that the elite families, through business and technology, would create the new order. Lenin wanted to socialize things directly through strong government. And I think with the use of terrorism since 9/11, our government has gotten away with strengthening itself, spending vast amounts of money, and arming up the police departments like their SS German stormtroopers. And the federal government giving free SWAT vehicles and tanks and all kinds of crazy vehicles to the local police departments, which in some towns they rejected and said, we don't want this. This is insane. Went into the police station office yesterday to get a document approved for something, business. And it looked like I was getting into Fort Knox. I mean, it was like trying to get into the courthouse, you know, all that. So they have definitely separated themselves from us. You know, they've made themselves appear to be our opposition, the enemy of the people. Crazy. It's all psychological. Predictive programming. Much later, in 1934, H.G. visited personally with FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in the U.S. and Stalin in Moscow. So Mr. H.G. Wells was definitely connecting. By the way, all three were Freemasons. Remember, my series is Freemasonry and Satanism. After visiting with FDR, H.G. declared that the United States was the most effective transmitting instrument possible for the coming of the New World Order. And remember, the New World Order, just to be sure everybody has this, is a satanic New World Order. They're attacking Christianity at every angle. They're bringing us the decadent sexual lifestyle, gay marriage, and even Bruce Jenner, now called Caitlyn Jenner. Her pictures are in the grocery store on the front page of magazines, posing as a model, Bruce Jenner. And then, of course, football halftime shows with Katy Perry and Lady Gaga at the London Olympics, Madonna, Beyonce, all the satanic rituals on TV during the Grammys, any kind of shows. Predictive programming. He felt that FDR was incorporating HG's open conspiracy ideas for bringing in the New World Order, and that HG had been advocating, for instance, FDR's brain trust, technocratic string pullers like Felix Frankfurter and Raymond Mollet, who made policy for Franklin Delano Roosevelt president. After his meeting with Stalin, he described Stalin, "I've never met a man more candid, fair and honest. And to nothing occult and sinister. Everyone trusts him." These are the people responsible for killing 66 million Christians and tearing down the Christian churches and driving the whole economy of Russia and the whole nation into severe poverty, famine, death, dead bodies laying in the street. 10, 15 years, Russia was closed off to the world. And people were being eliminated. 66 million. How many Jews did they say were killed in Germany? 6 million? And here in Russia, where you could throw a karak across the border, 66 million. We never hear about that Holocaust. Why? Because they weren't Jews, they were Christians. And Christians are goyim and cattle. Goyim means cattle. Those are their words, not mine. Alright, readers may realize from this that the US and the USSR and the UK have been all guided towards the same goal. As I had said before, they are in cahoots. Why did they ship all the manufacturing resources to China? And Tex Mars was discussing it today. I didn't know this. But all that Iraqi oil, I think China's, according to Tex Mars, well-known author, writer, TexMars.com, T-E-X-E, Mars, M-A-R-R-S. Watch some of his videos, get some of his books. Beware of the Six-Pointed Star is one of his books. Anyways, apparently China is buying the Iraq oil for $2 a barrel, when the going rate is $70 or more. So who benefited? Why, when the U.S. troops, shock and awe, attacked Iraq, does all the oil go to China instead of the other countries or the U.S.? Somebody's building up China. Probably to be the world police. And they're talking about maybe they're going to use Chinese troops to police the USA during the martial law revolution that is going to be created to destroy America and create the New World Order? So it appears. Alright, while he networked with countless persons around the world, directly promoting his views, which obviously lined up with the plan, his books quietly served a more subtle but important role. The reader may have observed the following about human nature. When first confronted with something true but strange, predictive programming here, the mind rejects it as it's ridiculously crazy. The second time it is heard, it is merely rejected. And often the third time the truth confronts them, the person will say, when the truth confronts them, I knew that, as if the item were self-evident. So we do know that these psychologists and psychiatrists and Freud and many others, Darwin, they were studying the human brain and how the human reacts, like what they're doing with Jade Helm. Is Jade Helm just a gigantic intimidation program to intimidate the people of the United States? Obviously, when you have tanks and bombs going off and all this other stuff, you're not going to go out and buy a new lawnmower, or a new car, or a new house, or conduct any business or any thought processes along that line. So at any effort at all, effect at all, and effort, it's going to hurt the economy, Jade Helm. With all these months long, apparently a couple of months, of all these seemingly military exercises across the United States, pretending to extract dissidents, people who maybe believe in the Constitution, who now they're going to call terrorists, or Christians, they're going to call them haters, because they don't want to go along with gay marriage and other things, and take the mark of the beast when they collapse the U.S. currency. Now look at the titles of his books, Anticipation and Things to Come. The way they were written, it is evident that he is psychologically conditioning the public to accept the stages of the New World Order as if they were self-evident. He was a master at this, and indeed, when I hear the elite today, I hear echoes of H.G. Wells' ideas. For instance, David Rockefeller in 1991, Bilderberger meeting. The world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government which will never again know war, but only peace and prosperity for the whole of humanity. He's lying. It's not for the whole of humanity. It's whoever's left, and it's going to say that here, believe it or not. Contrary to the assumptions by many readers of Aldous Huxley, Orson Welles, and H.G. Wells, these authors were not opposed to their prophetic views of Big Brother's one-world dictatorship. There you go. That doesn't sound like peace and prosperity for the whole of humanity. H.G. strongly believed in radical eugenics to kill the inferior races and useless eaters. See? He believed the state should educate people, control their minds to obediently serve the state. He believed in social engineering. He was opposed to Christians being allowed to teach their children about God, according to Fritz Springmeier. And religious tolerance. And again, I read some of his book here. See all my little tabs? He did, in fact, think that way, and says so. If you were an Illuminati insider, an Illuminati is just another organization, like down the road when you see the Freemasonic Scottish Rite Temple in your corner street downtown. The Illuminati is just another group of people, like the Knights of Columbus, or the York Rite, or the Rosicrucians. If you were an Illuminati insider like the late Masonic prophet Manly P. Hall, who served as Grand Master in both the Illuminati and Freemasonry, you would understand the esoteric reference that H.G. made in A Modern Utopia, page 67, that the heir dictatorship New World Order would be Bacon's visionary House of Solomon. House of Solomon, King Solomon's temple in Israel, Jerusalem. Now they're having the Middle East war since 9/11, which was planned. General Wesley Clark said he was told by an insider at the Pentagon. We all know it was planned. And Saudi Arabians were apparently, supposedly on those planes. Then one wonders why they attacked Iraq. And the first thing they did is made a beeline for the museums to get the artifacts with all the ancient writings. There's something bigger going on. And CERN, with Shiva, the demon of India, out front of CERN, the Hadron Collider. And then the Vatican has the telescope in Arizona named Lucifer. This statement alone links H.G.'s thinking with the Illuminati's occult plans. It shows H.G. was an insider with knowledge of the plans. Remember, this document, I think, can be found on Henry Macau's website. I'm not reading all of it. So go look it up and print it out. Show it to your friends. Research it. Don't believe me. Don't believe Fritz Springmeier. Don't believe Henry Macau. Do some homework. The internet right now is a valuable resource while you can still use it. So make sure you print stuff out that you find valuable. Or download it and save it on your computer. H.G. contained an intense intellectual curiosity, a keen comprehensive brain, great willpower, and a disdain for the common man and the Christian God. He revealed in The Invisible King, 1917, that his deity was a personification of the 5-year plan. Reading from the script, was Wells merely predicting, or was he helping to shape and create a new world order? There is no doubt that he was a major player to create it. His ideas have been used as a guide, although it could be postulated that his ideas are copied from a master plan that remains hidden from view. The powers that be have intentionally manipulated the crime rate in line with Wells' prediction that a police state would grow in response to a growing crime threat. And I've been in a courtroom. And we all know this is true. I've talked to some friends of mine in the past who were police officers. But I've been in a courtroom, and this one guy apparently stabbed some people. And the judge let him out on his own reconnaissance. And many cops have complained that we arrest them, we send them to court, the system, they just release them. They just release them. It's part of the plan to increase the crime rate. And meanwhile, all the people have to pay lawyer fees and all these other stuff. It's a money-making operation also. The war on terror is a development in line with this. Obviously, H.G.'s writings were a blueprint to create and not mere idle reflections of an intellectual, curious man. Born in 1866, Wells wrote a series of books that spell out how the coming New World Order would come about. The Happy Turning, A Dream of Life, which makes references to futuristic dreams. He had included Walking with Jesus, who in H.G.'s repeating dreams was also disappointed in humanity for its stupidity and indifference. And I've been telling people, complaining and talking and upset that they were mass murdering people in Iraq and Afghanistan and all throughout the Middle East. You could watch videos on YouTube with guys in helicopters and machine gun spotting a couple bodies down there around the truck and then start firing and just slaughtering them horribly. This cannot be humanity. Imagine if you were an alien and you were watching this planet and seeing how these humans behave. And I don't think most humans behave that way, because I do know the people who contrive and start all these wars, one of their biggest complaints is you can't get the soldiers to be vicious and kill. England had a big problem with that, getting the English snipers and shooters to hit the Germans and kill them. Nobody wanted to, normal citizens, normal people do not want to kill each other. But I suspect there is one group of people who hates all the rest, and they're probably living over there in Zionist Israel, and they control the world, and most of our politicians and leaders are probably members of their group in disguise as Christians and other things. Just saying, so what it seems. Presidents are all related, most of them according to Fritz Springmeier. And in my studies, it seems like a lot of these representatives and senators and other people are revolving family dynasties. I guess once you get in, you can get your son in or your daughter in. The Kennedy family is a good point of view. The Bush family is a good point of view. And now Bill Clinton would like to see his wife Hillary get in there. Can't we find better people than these seemingly horrible people? What did Hillary say about when questioned how Mr. Stevens got killed during Benghazi? She goes and she screamed, "What does it matter how he got killed?" It's like 911. You mention it to anybody and they go, "Forget about it. It happened a long time ago." The murderers are the ones who are running our country. You can't forget about it. Anyways, one of the concepts of Wells' open conspiracy was that many people worldwide would openly contribute to the creation of the New World Order. This parallels another occult prophet, Alice Bailey. There we go. We went over the Alice Bailey, Helenina Blavatsky, and those books, Letters on Meditation, Secret Doctrine, where they got all their information from a spirit guide from the other realm. Published by Lucifer Publishing Company, which changed the name to Lucas, obviously, to cover up the direct connection to Lucifer. And Alice Bailey and her ideas in externalization of the hierarchy. So there's going to be a hierarchy of people separate from the citizens, where she predicts that things done in secret in the occult world would be mainstreamed to bring in the New World Order. And of course that would be gay marriage and transgender changes, like Bruce Jenner in the checkout aisle of your supermarket as Caitlyn Jenner, posing like a model. I guess now going about her business, his business, whatever business, of motivational speaking. People like that are going to be advising other people. Sick world. To those familiar with how the Illuminati have set up groups like the CFR, Council of Foreign Relations, the TLC, Trilateral Committee, will take note that HG was an RIIA, Royal Institute for International Affairs, which is the British equivalent of the CFR, which are all Illuminati people. Heritage Foundation, Ford Foundation, Carnegie Foundation. They take over all these foundations, and money goes to how they can promote the New World Order. Edith Starr Miller in Occult Theocracy, we went over that book in the last series of the Blue Lodge Handbook. 12 videos I made, 2 hours each, 24 hours. Wow, could have a little marathon watching those. She does a good job of linking the plethora of organizations that the occult hierarchy breed to carry out their program, and the Fabian Society. You're going to love this. Go look up Fabian Society on the internet. And it literally has a wolf with a sheep's skin and a sheep head over it. Wolf in sheep's clothing was one of them. HG was an active member in the Fabian Society. A wolf pretending to be a sheep. Alright, the Webb's leaders of the Fabian Society, also under Lord Robert Cecil, British intelligence direction. So the intelligence agencies are all infiltrated with all these Illuminati people. It's like we did in that one video not too long ago. The 2 CIA agents with 35 one-pound packages of cocaine with the black scorpion label on the top cover. And the local militia in Texas caught them crossing the border in a Jeep, managed to catch them, and then they produced CIA ID with all that cocaine, and then they contacted the CIA, who said, nope, they're not with us. So apparently it's pretty clear that the secret intelligence agencies are seriously into the drug business. And if some citizen gets caught selling some of those drugs that the intelligence agencies bring in, the poor citizen winds up in jail for 20 years, prison. Alright, look at who else is mentioned. Including other such personages as Sir Edward Grey, Bertrand Russell. Remember we went over Bertrand Russell in the Bloodlines of the Illuminati of the Blue Lodge Handbook? He's the one who created the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Skull and Bones, the Russell family, party with the Mormon Church. And, oh, we got another one here, Cecil's cousin, Lord Alfred Balfour, which made a deal with the Rothschilds to get the Palestinians land, called the Balfour Agreement, B-A-L-F-O-U-R. Look it up. Ignorance will not serve us. We need to know the facts. Son of a servant, he served the elite. Now bear in mind, H.G. was born to a servant, granted, a head servant of the British elite. And here he is rubbing shoulders with the Illuminati aristocratic elite. Also bear in mind that H.G. despised the lower classes and promoted the idea that the elite's big business would lead us into the New World Order, along with technology and technocrats that run that technology. H.G.'s idea on the power of technology and technocrats to create a New World Order spawned an entire movement in that direction. I knew in 1991 that I was the first to identify H.G. as a Freemason. That could lead to controversy because the Masons' lodges do not publicly recognize him as a member. But apparently they recognized him in those New Age magazines that I have shown in my videos. That the Freemasons were publishing, called the New Age magazine. Look it up. There are a certain set of members whose membership they perpetually keep quiet about. I base my assertion that he was a Freemason on my back issues of Scottish Rite's New Age magazine. I've gone over them and shown them in many of my previous videos. That I had been fortunate enough to buy going back to almost World War I. I should go online and see if I could pick up a few more. These magazines treated him like they did members, as well as referring to him as a Masonic prophet. On the other side of things, H.G., in his books, movies, makes references to Freemasonry and uses Masonic imagery symbols. Particularly of note is his reference in his short story, The Inexperienced Ghost. His character says, now Sanderson is a Freemason, a member of the Lodge of the Four Kings, which devotes itself so ably to the study and elucidations, to make it lucid, to tell the story, of all the mysteries of the Masonry's past and present, like I had done reading the Blue Lodge handbooks, the rituals going on and all that. So, the occult symbols of the winged globe, a symbol often used by Freemasons. Charles Taze Russell, we went over that in the last video, founder of the JW's Watchtower Society, the Jehovah's Witnesses, was to become the symbol of the New World Order in the book movie The Shape of Things to Come. And Fritz Springmeier says, read my book, Be Wise as Serpents. Go look that up, Fritz Springmeier, Be Wise as Serpents. Available in a pirated version on the internet. And The Watchtower and the Masons, 1990. So if you can go online and find any of Fritz Springmeier's books, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Henry Macau, the Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world, who was a Jewish Canadian famous author, writer. Also noteworthy is H.G.'s close association with the Huxleys, who were Freemasons. Freemason T.H. Huxley, a fellow of the Royal Society at 26, mentored Wells and stressed the idea of a scientific dictatorship, which H.G. was able to promote to the extent it became a popular movement. Wells shows us that decision makers are indeed guided by detailed futuristic plans. That's why they write a lot of those books, overpopulation and all that stuff. It's all guides for the morons, bought and paid for traders in our society, to go about their business assisting the people who pay them to create the New World Order. Them against us, apparently. Used to be the people worked for the citizens on the tax money paying their salaries, but now they just blatantly steal from the citizens and suppress and take away the citizens' freedoms and rights. And apparently they want to destroy Christianity and bring us the Luciferic religion from ruling the world from Israelis, Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, which Tel Aviv, I guess, is the #1 spot for gay people to go. So they advertised on the travel agency marketing websites. Look it up on the internet. Wells shows us that decision makers are guided. H.G. Wells was at the center of what the Illuminati were doing to create the stages of development towards a one-world government. That he believed in what he was doing, there is no question. His possible occult activities, if they took place, have been well hidden. He was a practical intellectual whose writings have changed our world. Alright, comments for H.G. Wells, prophet of the New World Order. David said, we got some comments here. Wells' prescient understanding of technology, especially his detailed description of television, gave me the same eerie feeling as Bacon's 1625 description of synthesizers in the New Atlantis. Says here, all over the countryside, he knew, on every crest and hill, where once the hedges had interlaced, and cottages, churches, inns, and farmhouses had nestled among the trees, windwheels similar to those he saw, and bearing like them vast advertisements, gaunt and distinctive symbols of the new age, cast their whirling shadows and storing incessant the energy that flowed away incessantly through all the arteries of the city. So in his visions and dreams, apparently H.G. Wells saw all these vast electric wire systems and electric windmills they have out west in Oklahoma, across the country, wind farms. So it's interesting too, you know, when they do talk about like Nikola Tesla and many of the famous people that were into the occult, or the fathers were ministers and they just had premonitions and visions, that were during the dreams they saw things of the future. I made note of the comment by Wells by W.W. I didn't know that Wells became disillusioned with the great plan. The shape of things to come is an obscenely enthusiastic Masonic wet dream of the final manifestation, or I should say infestation, of Plato's Republic, aka the New World Order. This was published in 1933. I like it when I find somebody with some intellectual things to say, like this guy who wrote this comment. There is no doubt that Wells was an authorized author. In other words, he was doing all this intentionally. Predictive programming. Whose job was fronting for the Fabian Socialist and the Upper Masonry, preparing us all for the New World Order. Okay, moving on. Another comment says, at least he recognized and propagated his grief in his eras, unlike most of the demonic horde that travels this vile path. Henry, great article by Fritz, Dan says. Lord Bertrand Russell wrote in Scientific Outlook in 1931, on those rare occasions when a boy or girl had to pass the age at which it is usual to determine status, social status, shows such marked ability as to seem the intellectual equal of the rulers. This is Lord Bertrand Russell. Remember, Russell family is one of the 13 Illuminati? You're not going to believe what he says right here. So when a girl or boy has passed the age to determine social status, requires serious consideration. If the youth is content to abandon his previous association and throw in his lot wholeheartedly with the rulers, he may, after suitable test, be promoted. If he shows any regrettable solidarity with his previous associates, the rulers will reluctantly conclude that there is nothing to be done with him except to send him to the lethal chamber, a gas chamber, before his ill-disciplined intelligence has had time to spread revolt. That's why if they do pull off the Jade Helm and it really is something nefarious to extract dissidents, let's call it what it is. Extract like they normally do in a revolution. They call it a purge. So anybody who has any kind of intellectual opinion but does not go along with the New World Order gay agenda party line, satanic Lucifer ritual, will have to go to the lethal chamber. Gas chamber. And okay, moving on. He was no prophet, though. Through British Masonry, he was informed of the long-term plan and instructed to write about it. Movies have replaced novels as the medium of predictive programming and indoctrination. So those movies that we've all been watching have been programming us. Predictive programming and indoctrination. Some people wake up and see it, like watching Seinfeld or Modern Family, 2.5 Men, Charlie sleeping with a different girl on every show, Seinfeld sleeping with a different girl on many shows. Predictive programming. People start to believe that it is a norm and not something that goes against God's commandment. Number 7, do not commit adultery. It's not a suggestion, it's a commandment. We are all sinners, but we should try to do better. It's my opinion. And many others. Alright, when we hear some schlub at the table in a restaurant or a bus pontificating about how there are too many people on the planet, we've got to reduce the population, that's a specimen of predictive programming indoctrination. So there you have that document. Now I'm going to read a little bit from the book, not too much. Now consider 1920. Russian Revolution took place in 1917, 1918. They killed the Tsar, they took over the country, and shut everything down, like martial law, maybe the United States. No electricity, no water, no grocery stores, no gas, no food. Imagine it. Let's say what H.G. Wells describes in his opinion. I already read the thing about January 1914. He was in Petersburg and Moscow, and in his second visit was in 1920. I was asked to repeat this visit by Mr. Kamarovnev of the Russian trade delegation in London. I'm only doing my highlighted portions. You can go online and find the Open Conspiracy book, which has much more in it than just the open conspiracy story. Our dominant impression of things Russian is an impression of a vast, irreparable breakdown. The great monarchy that was here in 1914, before they killed the Tsar now, people sent over from the Federal Reserve, from Washington, from London, the Illuminati people, Karl Marx, all those Lenin, the other people involved. We'll get to their names. The administration, straight of social, financial, and commerce systems connected with it have, under the strains of 6 years of incessant war, fallen down and smashed utterly. Never in history has there been so great a debacle before. Never in history. So 1914, the war started. 6 years later, it's 1920. And everything is completely in shambles. Famine, starving, hungry people everywhere. By its own inherent rottenness, and by the thrust and strains of aggressive imperialism, the Russian part of the old civilized world that existed before 1914 fell and is now gone. Russian imperialism. Well, right now we have the United States of America imperialism. Don't we have 180 military bases all over the world? Haven't we overthrown many countries and had presidents of South America, Central America, and other places assassinated? It's all common knowledge. And we've been at war now since 9/11. And then they've turned it on us, claiming the terrorists are here, and giving us the thing with the Patriot Act, the Freedom Act, and other documents that we're not allowed to read, and a secret program called Jade Helm. And they say we owe so many trillions to the in government debt, which all that money they spent, they didn't spend on us. They spent to build this vast imperialistic network. So here's how I get it straight. This is important. Rothschilds, the Illuminati, head of the snake, Zionism, Israel, controls the USA. They control the Federal Reserve. They control our senators, representative, political people, CEOs of huge corporations, and the presidency. So they tell them what to do, and they tell them that they have to borrow from the Illuminati Federal Reserve Bank. And the United States citizens on the other side here, who have nothing to do with anything, are responsible for that debt. And they use all that money to overthrow other countries, assassinate people, buy weapons, tanks, military equipment, dealing drugs at the same time to the United States people, Secret Service agencies. And all that debt piles up and piles up that they're spending overseas for the people overseas, and using the U.S. troops and government officials. The debt keeps on going up and up and up and up and up and up. And we're supposed to be responsible for something that's not benefiting us, not being spent on us. And actually to the detriment. They're borrowing money to start spying on us. So they want to crash the USA system like they talk about in the news, the dollar crashing, gold crashing. The economy, they're taking away all the manufacturing, shipping, industrial parcel businesses. Farming is shut down, corporate farming now. Then they're using HAARP and sky spraying to control the weather and ruin crops. Meanwhile, they say that we're responsible for the debt. Well, we don't have any say-so in any of it. The elected officials are not elected, they're selected. No matter which one of the party people that wins, they win because either party, those people belong to them. By its own inherent rottenness, and by the thrust and strains of aggressive imperialism in the Russian part of the old civilized world that existed before 1914 fell and is now gone. The peasant, who was the base of the old pyramid, remains upon the land, living very much as he always lived, those that did live. Everything else is broken down or is breaking down. Amid the vast disorganization, an emergency government supported by a disciplined party of perhaps 150 adherents, Jewish people, the Communist Party has taken control. It has, at the price of much shooting, suppressed so they had a lot of brigades, established a sort of order and security in the exhausted towns, and set up a crude rationing system. See why I'm reading this? It sounds like we could be reading this a couple years from now about the USA tomorrow. The dominant fact for the Western reader, the threatening and disconcerting fact, is that a social and economic system very much like our own and intimately connected with our own has crashed. And like we read in H.G. Wells' paper there, it seems like that's the plan. It is a wonderful fact, I think, that in this city in which most of the shrinking population is already nearly starving, and hardly anyone possesses a second suit of clothes, or more than a single change of worn and patched linen, flowers can be and are still bought and sold. Nice. Prevent the profiteer driving up its last vestiges of food to incredible prices. So if anybody was trying to sell anything in a communist system, they were shot. The population of Petersburg had fallen from 1,200,000, this is Petersburg, Russia, before 1919, to a little over 700,000 and is still falling. So 700,000 from 1.2 is 3, that's 5, that's 500,000 people. Some people probably ran for their lives. A lot of people died of starvation or were shot. So if you grew some potatoes and tried to take it into town and sell them, and you were caught doing capitalistic business, they would shoot you. These bundles that everyone carries are partly the rations of food that are doled out by the Soviet organization. And I'm just reading some highlighted stuff here, just to give you the gist of the potential of the calamity that could come about in the United States if we allow them to intentionally crash it, saying that we owe all that money that didn't benefit us, wasn't spent on us, wasn't part of any agenda even remotely related to us. 911 was an inside job used to fool us. But in Russia, this has to be done on a basis of uncontrollable peasant production, with a population temperamentally indisciplined and self-indulgent. The struggle is necessarily a bitter one. I notice that Wells here has trying to justify these people what they're doing. The detected profiteer, the genuine profiteer who profiteers on any considerable scale, gets short strife, he is shot. And they want to disarm Americans. Now you know why they want to disarm Americans. It's all got to do with a New World Order. Quite ordinary trading may be punished severely. All trading is called speculation and is now illegal. And that's so crazy. These people who are going to force the New World Order on us, or trying to, are the ones behind all the speculation of the stock market. That's all right. What's good for them is not good for us. They want to live in a utopian lifestyle, in mansions with vast tables of great foods and wines, while the population lives like the Hunger Games movie. But a queer street corner trading in food and so forth is winked at in Petersburg, and is quite openly practiced in Moscow, because only by permitting this can the peasants be induced to bring food in. So by just the human nature, hope that isn't Jade Helm ambulance. This is June 13th, and it's supposed to kick it off on June 15th, Monday. Be curious to watch the next 90 days to see what goes on across the USA. Hopefully nothing. Hopefully it's just a big intimidation of the USA people. There is also much underground trade between the buyers and sellers who know each other. We would find a crowd of peasants at every stopping place waiting to sell milk, eggs, apples, bread, and so forth. This is H.G. Wells in St. Petersburg and in Moscow. They have more land than they had, the peasants, and they had got rid of their landlords, so the government probably killed all the landlords and got the peasants out there to start growing things. This does not prevent their resisting whatever they can the attempts of the Red Guards to collect food at regulation prices. So they grow crops and the government sets the prices and you have to sell it to them. Even if it's a penny for a giant basket of tomatoes. So everybody in the city can eat while you farm and have to work for them. But every class above the peasants, including the official class, is now in a state of extreme privation. The credit and industrial system that produced commodities has broken down, and so far attempts to replace it by some other form of production has been ineffective. There is no replacing a broken cup or glass except by a seditious search and illegal trading. So if you have a glass or a cup like this, and you break it, you're tough out of luck. Drugs and any medicines are equally unattainable. There is nothing to take for a cold or a headache. If anyone falls into a real illness, the outlook is grim. In this underclad town population, in this dismantled and ruinous city, is, in spite of all the future trading that goes on, appallingly underfed. So funny how much we take for advantage the way we live right now. People have bread cards and wait in queues for bread, but for 3 days the St. Petersburg bakeries stopped for lack of flour. There are piles of wood along the quays, along the middle of the main streets, in the courtyards, and in every place where wood can be piled. Remember, they have really bad winters in Russia. Last year, many people who had to live in rooms below the freezing point, the water pipes froze up, the sanitary machinery ceased to work, no toilets. The reader must imagine the consequences. People huddled together in the ill-lit rooms and kept themselves alive with tea and talk. I will deal with the Bolsheviks' government when I have painted the general scenery of our problem. The Bolshevik government were the Bolshevik Jews who went in there and assassinated the Tsar to take over Russia. Why? Part of the New World Order. But let me say here that this desolate Russia is not a system that has been attacked and destroyed by something vigorous and malignant. It is an unsound system that has worked itself out and fallen down. Listen to this. It was not communism which built up these great impossible cities, but capitalism. So he is an anti-capitalist. He is a Masonic person, worked for the Fabian Society, socialist. It was not communism that plunged this huge, creaking, bankrupt empire into 6 years of exhausting war. It was the European imperialism. And I'll say this, the European imperialism is what is running the United States and England and NATO, the European Union, is it not? We can call these, look at the United States with 180 plus bases all over the world, dominating governments like they're doing right now with the Ukraine, overthrowing all the countries in the Middle East, slaughtering the Arabs every day. So this European right now we have American imperialism, and for fear of the USA citizen, I suspect they have to take us down. There is one big thing different between the United States of America and Russia, that I think maybe these people are making a huge mistake. I know they are. they think they can do here what they did in Russia. That's why they're doing all this testing with Ferguson, Baltimore fighting, and Boston bombing, and Sandy Hook shooting, and all this stuff. 9/11. They're seeing and thinking the American citizen is so apathetic and stupid, he's never going to do anything about it. I say it's just that the American citizen hasn't woke up. And the big difference between the United States of America and Russia is the weather. We have a much milder weather than they do in Russia. And hence, I think they're in for a huge mistake. They may drive us out of our homes, turn off the electricity, start slaughtering people, but once they wake up the people, God forbid that the USA people give up their guns. Then it's going to be over. They'll be able to slaughter at will. But the weather here is more milder, temperatures warmer. So I think the resistance, the guerrilla fighting, the citizenry, I think any world force that tried to take over the USA would be in for a huge problem. The vindictive French creditor and the journalist British oaf are far more responsible for these deathbed miseries than any communist. So obviously H.G. Wells is defending the communists. Is a Freemason, is an Illuminati member, Fabian Society. Alright, reading a little more here. Mr. Bertrand Russell's description of Gorky's health had also made me anxious of his own account. So Mr. H.G. Wells clearly knows who Mr. Bertrand Russell is, the guy who started the Skull and Bones, the Jehovah's Witnesses, part of the Mormon church people groups, was in the drug opium trade business, as we read in Fritz Springmeier's book on the Blue Lodge Handbook, 12 videos I made. Alright, moving on here. Gorky. But he has gained the confidence and respect of most of the Bolshevik leaders, and he has become a kind of a necessity and semi-official salvage man under the new regime. So they're trying to bring a new regime to the United States. A lot of people call Obama the Obama regime, or the Bush regime, and I say they're just puppets of the Illuminati, like all the other politicians are. The Russian smash at the end of 1917, that's when they killed the Tsar, was certainly the completest that has ever happened in any modern social organization. That time of debacle was the time of complete social disorder. It was a social dissolution. In many parts of Russia, there was a peasant revolt. Here in the United States, if anything like that were to happen, we need to get organized quickly and go on the offensive. Running and hiding won't do anybody any good. They had house burning, often accompanied by quite horrible atrocities. It was an explosion of the very worst side of human nature in despair, and for most of the abominations committed, the Bolsheviks are about as responsible as the government of Australia. So he's trying to say the Bolsheviks are not responsible for all this mayhem. It's capitalistic society. Again, predictive programming. They want us to believe this. They want to take away the guns. They want people to be forced into the gay lifestyle, transgendered, like Bruce Jenner turning into Caitlyn Jenner. Front page of the supermarket right now, if you go shopping, you'll see him posing like a model. And of course, you can go on the internet and see Lady Gaga getting twerked, and Neil Patrick Harris on stage in his underwear. And the winner of the Eurovision, like the American Idol program in England, Conchita Wurst, face dressed up like Jesus, the body of a woman in a silky dress, which is the way the devil is, half man, half woman, singing the song Phoenix Rising with the words "You Can't Stop Us," Cochita is a female part. Worst is a sausage, like a male phallic unit. There's some sick mindset with these people. Sick. People would be held up and robbed even to their shirts in open daylight in the streets of Petersburg and Moscow. No one interfering. So people would hold you up for your clothes. They could take them off. Murdered bodies laying disregarded in the gutters, sometimes for a whole day, with the passengers on the floorwalk going to and fro. Armed men, often professing to be Red Guards, entered houses and looted and murdered. Imagine Chinese troops all across the United States, or Russian troops, breaking in people's housing and looting and murdering. The early months of 1918 saw a violent struggle of the new Bolshevik government, not only with counter-revolutions, but with robbers and brigades in every description. It was not until the summer of 1918, and after thousands of looters and plunderers had been shot, that life began to be ordinary safe again in the streets of the Russian great towns. So after they murdered all the oppositions, things quieted down. Think that'll happen in the USA? Is Jade Helm a part of all this? Am I fear-mongering by reading this book and reading H.G. Wells' essay by Fritz Springmeier and all these other books and all the satanic programs and stuff, symbolism we see on TV and corporate logos? In St. Petersburg, we found there were much more than 40 shows going on. So the theater was going on. You didn't have to pay to go to see a theater. So apparently the theater actors had nothing better to do, so they kept on acting. The new social organization, fighting, robbery, murder, and the wildest disorder had no place for them, the scientific workers. It had forgotten them. The scientific men at first, the Soviet government, had little regard, as the first French Revolution, which had no need for chemists. Like I said, I'm only reading highlighted portions. I'm jumping around. Here we saw the headquarters of a special rationing system, which provides as well as it can for the needs of 4,000 scientific workers and their dependents, in all perhaps 10,000 people. At this center, they not only draw their food rations, but they can get baths and barber, tailoring, cobbling, and the like conveniences. He talks about the different people he met, Mr. H.G. Wells. Seeing all these distinguished men living a sort of refugee life amidst the impoverished ruins of the fallen imperialist system has made me realize how helplessly dependent the man of exceptional gift is upon a securely organized civilization. The ordinary man can turn from this to that occupation. He can be a sailor or a worker in a factory or a digger or whatnot. The collapse of the Russian imperial system has smashed up all the shelters in which such things could exist. The crude Marxist philosophy, which divides all men into bourgeois and proletariat, so business owners and workers, which sees all social life as a stupidly simple class war. In this strange Russia, a conflict of cold, famine, and pitiful privation, there is actually going on a literary task that would be inconceivable in the rich England and the rich America of today. The mental food of the English and American masses dwindles and deteriorates, and nobody in authority cares a rap. The mental food of the English and American masses dwindles and deteriorates. Well, most people I know are probably watching The Simpsons, Ellen DeGeneres, Family Man, stupid stuff. I don't watch any of that stuff. I read books. That's why I make these videos, so people can get a different perspective on reality. The Bolshevik government is at least a shade above that level. The bookshops are closed and book selling and every form of trading is illegal. Marx's communism has always been a theory of revolution, a theory not merely lacking in creative and constructive ideas, but hostile to creative and constructive ideas. Every communist orator has been trained to contend utopianism. Contempt for utopianism. Marx the prophet and his sacred books supply it with no lead in the matter. Bolshevism, having no schemes, must improvise, therefore, clumsily, and is reduced to these pathetic attempts to salvage the wreckage of an intellectual life of the old order. Like I said, if they crash the USA citizens, the people are going to be in a big surprise and shock. They take it for granted, the pharmacy, the grocery store, the shoe store, the local pub down the street, beer, wine, clean water, toilets. Who's going to man the septic systems, the electricity power plants, the heat in the winter? When a social order based on private property crashes, I should say when they crash it intentionally, when private property is with some abruptness and no qualification abolished, this does not abolish and destroy the things which have hitherto constituted private property. Houses and their gear remain standing, still being occupied and used by the people who had them before, except those people who have fled. Anyone who knows human nature will understand that there has been a certain amount of quiet annexation of desirable things by inadvertent officials, and perhaps less inadvertently by their wives. So the people in charge will probably kill you for whatever you have. If they wanted your house, they'd probably come in there and shoot 3 or 4 of you, how many is there, and just take your house. Maybe the next day start wearing your clothes. These Freemasonic, Illuminati, Zionism, Satanists, Jesuits, occultic, witchcraft people in charge trying to cause this don't intend any good for us decent people. Looters died against the wall in Moscow in the spring of 1918. So if you were hungry and you had no money, you couldn't use money anyways. You had a little ration card. And if somebody stole your box of goods you got with your ration card on your way home, remember they were looting people in the street, taking their shirt. And then you had to go get some milk for your baby and you were caught looting, you were shot up against the wall. The government there, for greater security, there had been a gathering together and cataloging of everything. So if you went inside a business or a government office, every candlestick on the table, a cup, everything had a tag and a number. It is of primary importance that people in the West should realize this. If the Great War had gone on for a year or so more, Germany and the Western powers would probably have repeated with local variations of the Russian crash. So they're saying if you're at war for more than a couple years, your whole country's probably going to crash. And we've been at war since 9/11, and they're piling up the debt even more, increasing the budget, and they're saying that we, the people, owe it. And again, it's all intentional. It's all a predictive programming. It's all the rules. The same people are going to be in charge before the economic crash in the USA, if it happens, and after the USA crash. Except now they have a country of slaves, those that are still alive. And we've got documentation here for 100 years they've been planning the New World Order. The profiteer in Russia is not fined, but shot. For all I know, Western Europe may be still drifting, and even now towards a parallel crash. I am not by any means sure that we will have turned the corner. Wars, self-indulgences, and unproductive speculation may still be wasting more than the Western world is producing, in which case our own will crash. Currency failure, a universal shortage, social and political collapse, and all the rest of it is merely a question of time. H.G. Wells. It falsifies the whole world situation. It sets people altogether astray in their political actions. To assert that the frightful dissolution of Russia today is to any large extent the result merely of communist effort. In my opinion, it has only happened because of communist effort. The intrigues with the Jewish people, and may not be Jewish people, they may be from Kazakhstan, which is in that area. You can look it up on here. There's a lot of, even in Revelation in the Bible, it says Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. But to me, it's the Zionist Jewish folks, which may not be real Jews, Hebrews, but people who actually practice witchcraft and satanic religion with the six-pointed star, which is a magic symbol. They use like a hexagram to do curses and other magic things to harm other people and things. I know it sounds crazy. Kabbalah, witchcraft, Satanism. But apparently it's not crazy. Communicating with ghosts and masters and spiritual guides. This is all part of the New Age. In all those books, Alice Bailey, Helenita Blavatsky, Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, the Bible for the Freemasonic Lodges, and many, many, many more books that I've gone over and I'm going to continue to go over. It falsifies the whole world situation. It sets people altogether astray in their political actions. To assert that the frightful destitution of Russia today is to any large extent the result merely of communist effort. I just read it again because I think it was all done with communist effort. Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Bud Lights of the Illuminati, Henry Macau, Rabbi Marvin Antelman, all these things we've discussed. That the wicked communists have pulled down Russia to her present plight. And that if you can overthrow the communists, everyone and everything in Russia will suddenly become happy again. Russia fell into its present miseries through the World War, which was planned, by the way. Remember the Balfour Agreement that Rothschild made with Mr. Balfour of the UK to get the Palestinians land to create the State of Israel. Does H.G. Wells think we would have never found that out? And the moral and intellectual insufficiency of its ruling and wealthy people. And I do believe that the ruling, wealthy people of the United States are definitely at fault for not taking care of their own nation, having sold us out to the New World Order a long time ago. As our own British state, at present, even the American state may fall. They had neither the brains nor the conscience to stop warfare. Again, the people of the USA have nothing to do with the warfare, but we should be stopping our politicians from doing it. But people don't. And I've been screaming and yelling for 10 years, and people tell me to shut up. It's not their business. They had neither the brains nor the conscience to stop warfare, stop waste of all sorts, stop taking the best of everything and leaving everyone else dangerously unhappy until it was too late. They ruled and wasted the quarreled and blind to the coming disaster up to the very moment of its occurrence. And then, as I describe in the next chapters, the communists came in. So that's all I'm going to do on this video. I may take a part 2 on H.G. Wells and research some more material. I just thought it would be really good to get a bird's eye view, H.G. Wells over there, describing what he saw. And maybe we could potentially wake up some of us so we can prevent what could happen here. What's with this Jade Helm? What's with the Michigan and Flint blowing up bombs at a local closed school, freaking out all the people in town? Their buildings are shaking. In South Carolina, apparently they have a mass casualty trucks. 3 of them in a row. I saw the pictures. South Carolina mass casualty. Chester County, you can look it up. Chester County mass casualty trucks. On the street, says right on the back of a mass casualty. In June 2015. What's that about? And a lot of videos on YouTube about Jade Helm. But, you know, at any event, is certainly an intimidation and certainly not helping the economic situation in the United States by the government spending billions on this Jade Helm, which seems to be affecting the whole United States. Faking the extraction of dissidents, and now with the mass casualty trucks and tractor-trailer loaders with the razor wire, and trains with all kinds of UN vehicles and all kinds of SWAT-type vehicles and military vehicles running across the tracks in Texas. It just makes one wonder what the heck is going on. And thank you for watching my video. Leave me a thumbs up if you think this information and book reviews are a good thing worth doing. And if you have any information to add, there's a comment section. Well, I have a couple documents I'd like to briefly go over. And then I'm finished with this video. Predictive programming. You plant the seed, then you plant a little more to grow it, then you do something to almost confirm it, and you can make the people believe anything. June 5th, photo mass casualty unit seen in Chester County, South Carolina. I'm in North Carolina. So this is kind of concerning and close to home. Trucks. Big trucks. Chester County mass casualty unit. June 5th, 2015. Predictive programming. Am I getting to you? Here, let me do it another way. Show you a picture. You can look this up. 3 trucks in a row you can see there. Mass casualty unit seen in Chester County, South Carolina. In the last 2 months, we have documented over a dozen suspicious military movements throughout the country, as well as numerous training exercises with strong domestic focus. From training for house-to-house raids on American homes, to simulated explosions rocking neighborhoods, there has been an undeniable buildup in preparation for martial law. Chester County mass casualty unit trucks. When have you ever seen such a thing? I mean, normally you would have police trucks. Military, the National Guard has trucks. Why would they have a truck that says, intimidation comes to one mind? Or, I don't know. At this point, the major question that remains is whether or not Jade Helm is simply training for eventual civil unrest, or if it will actually create that unrest. And as we just reviewed with H.G. Wells, they've had a plan for 100 years or longer. Urban military training across the country. What's under this article I just showed you? Says here, military convoys and urban military training are happening across the entire country. Most recently with a massive urban military exercise taking place in Michigan that included explosions that literally rocked people's homes. And it says here, read Directive 3025.18, Defense Support of Civil Authorities here. With less than 3 hours between the city press release and the beginning of the exercise, residents were left in the dark about the urban military training until the last possible moment. Most had no idea what was happening as their homes shook from the force of simulated explosions. One lady said, "It was like a big, huge explosion. It shook my whole house. It shook the ground." What are they doing? Driving around with trucks, Chester County Mass Casualty Unit. There's 3 of them there in a row. Crazy. You think? Then one more document. Defense officials, this is defense officials, warns that DOD, Department of Defense, directive allowing the use of military force against American citizens is latest step towards martial law, June 1, 2015. So, military trains for domestic riot control. I got all these guys in gear. Defense officials warning destroys media claims that only conspiracy theorists believe martial law could be declared in the near future. In a stunning revelation published by mainstream news outlet, an anonymous Department of Defense official has revealed their belief that a DOD directive outlining military support to civilian authorities is the latest step towards President Obama eventually using military force against the American people. One thing he could do is the Pacific Trade Agreement, the PTT. And China has said, it's been in the mainstream news, demanded that the USA people be disarmed. Because China says we owe them trillions of dollars and they're going to buy lots of businesses and land here in the United States with all the money, which we know is a big orchestrated event. They moved the jobs from the United States after World War II to China to take down the USA, and they used the taxpayer dollars to finance this whole thing, debacle, besides all the overthrowing of countries and wars, 9/11 and everything. And put the tab on the American people. So none of those trillions and trillions went for the American people. They were literally sold out by the elites who will be in charge before the crash and after the crash. But the people will be free before the crash, but not free or alive after the crash. And as we saw with the H.G. Wells book and many others, they've been planning the New World Order for over 100 years. Easy. Alright, it says here, the quote from the defense official was published in a now viral report that detailed the 2010 DOD directive on how it could be used under authority from the president to unleash the might of the U.S. military onto a civilian population. So in the Pacific Trade Agreement, that they're doing in secret and they're not allowing the senators and representatives to read it. You have to go in through a special secret secure room and are not allowed to take any pictures or take any notes if you can get permission to look at the Pacific Trade Agreement. But I suspect in it, it'll have something about this trade agreement that Americans are not allowed to own guns. So will Obama come on the stage and press release on TV and say that the new trade agreement ratified with China, part of the United Nations initiative for the New World Order, New One World Religion, that all U.S. citizens must surrender their guns? And as we learned in the Russian Revolution, in the book The Open Conspiracy with H.G. Wells, that everybody, there was no food, there was no water, no nothing, and anybody who tried to scrounge anything up was probably called a thief and taken up against the wall and shot. 66 million people killed in the Russian Revolution. So this appears to be the latest step in the administrative's decision to use force within the United States against its citizens, a defense official told the Washington Times. According to the report, another anonymous U.S. official also claimed that Obama considered using the military during the Bundy Ranch standoff, but eventually decided against it. So they have a copy of this Department of Defense directive right here. Go look up this document. Do not believe me. I'll hold this up again so you can pause it and write it down and go look that up on the Yahoo or Google search. So the directive was signed on December 29, 2010, includes normal provisions for support of civilian emergency services before revealing that the President has the power to deploy the military on American citizens as he sees fit. And trust me, if they don't do it during the Obama thing and Bush gets in there or Hillary, they're all puppets. They're all going to go along with the New World Order that H.G. Wells talked about. All right, military drills and movements within the last 2 months. In a major report published last week, I wrote about the upcoming dirty bomb drills. Who wrote this? Alex Thomas. Intel Hub. Look that up. Dirty bomb drill known as Operation Northern Exposure, and how it was yet another military drill that has either taken place or been announced within the last 2 months. And remember, during 9/11, they were running a drill, pretending to have planes that were going to pretend to crash into buildings. Dick Cheney was in charge, while George Bush was in Florida reading a book called My Pet Goat to little kids. And if we know anything about the goat, if you look up the devil or Satan on the internet, he has a goat's head. I keep saying. Alright, the list includes, on March 13th, Intel Hub founder Shepard Ambellis, detailed photos and documentation of nearly 40 U.S. Army troops wielding training rifles and dressed in full combat gear, participating in an urban warfare-style training just outside Texarkana Regional Airport perimeter. There's a whole list of examples here. I'm not going to go read it all. You can go look it up. I'll read one more. A massive buildup, a lot of movement, and is undeniable at this point. Read the headline on April 25th, after a convoy was seen in Oroville, California, that stretched as far as the eye could see with probably military equipment. Alright, I will read about a couple comments here from citizens like you and me. Number one, there is no President Obama, Reggie says, because the lying thug has no valid birth certificate, hence no citizenship whatsoever in this country. Worsened by how the media and other pathetically incapacitated trash labeled this president. Alright, let's move on here. So we know that the CIA and the NATO and Secret Services, in my opinion, formed Al-Qaeda and ISIS and are using them to battle Assad because they can't do it themselves, public opinion. ISIS, maybe. He can slaughter his own people, so now they're threatening ISIS might nuke one of our cities. And ISIS is a creation of the CIA, Pentagon, NATO groups, Illuminati, Zionism, Jesuits, the secret mystery school people in the background that H.G. Wells talked about. This is why Obama has purged the upper ranks of the military and installed his loyal liberal lapdogs. And I did in one of my past videos showed the long list of the people who were purged. The most troubling part to me is the directive is when duly constituted federal, state, and local authorities are unable or decline to provide adequate protection for federal property or federal government functions. If you have a post office and arguably a mailbox that's federal property, the military doesn't have to be called in, and if they decline help, it doesn't matter. So a post mailbox is federal property. We, the people, have a directive against the DOD too. It's called a well-armed, well-regulated militia. 33% civilian population against 1% military population. Doesn't look good for the military. And I keep saying, if they wake up the USA citizens to this real effect of the Luciferian doctrine, New World Order, and everybody has been duped with predictive programming, psychological warfare, I think the government would be in for a big surprise. They think everybody's just going to be submissive and hand over the guns when they have a threat. And if they do, the next thing to do, there'll be no supermarkets and famine and looting and shooting and killing. And then if whoever survives that will get the mark of the beast and a microchip, and they'll know everywhere you go, and you'll be a virtual slave. They won't even have to handcuff you or put you in prison. They'll know where you are 24/7. Any governor or elected official of any state in the United States who has foreknowledge of the planned federal military attack, and that is what it amounts to, an absolute attack without the people's consent, and who doesn't use every media outlet to warn the people all over their state, should be stripped of public office immediately. I think there's a lot of good military men and police officers and other officials who will not go along with this. Let's hope and pray. Because if they do go along with it, once they subdue the population, they can't be trusted. The evil powers will have to eliminate them, like they always do. I know in the ancient history, when they would build a chamber for a pharaoh who died, after they built the whole thing and delivered the body, then the guards would shoot all those, not shoot, would kill, probably cut their throats or something, all those slave workers so there wouldn't be any witnesses. And they would bury them in there with the dead pharaoh or king. Okay, Affinity Net News here says, what I'm about to expose here is information you are never to learn. It is documented in U.S. status code, congressional records, direct quotes. I haven't pre-read this stuff, so what's he going to say? Quote, we'll know our disinformation campaign is complete when everything the American people believe is absolutely false. William Casey, Director, CIA. Predictive programming, maybe. The United States of America Incorporated, aka USA Inc., a private foreign-owned offshore international criminal banking military cartel that has been fraudulently masquerading as our sovereign constitutional governing body since the Act of 1871 that was finalized in 1938. I've mentioned this a few times. Please go look it up. The Act of 1871. So apparently we're not operating under the Constitution, and when you see the President speak, you will see a gold fringe around the flag. Look up Get That Gold Fringe Off My Flag on the internet, and you will see in-depth explanations that it is maritime law and martial law, not constitutional law. So if you get taken in for having a gun, say, and you think that you have some rights, you're in for a surprise if there's a gold fringe on that flag. As soon as you acknowledge that courtroom, plead innocent, plead guilty, whatever, there's no trial hearing. That judge can sentence you to death in 10 seconds. Out back and shot right away. That's martial law. That's maritime law. That's what they do during insurrections, martial law, and stuff like that, revolutions. That's why they have that. So get that gold fringe off my flag. So this guy's exposing that maybe we're under the United States Incorporated under a new corporation. I think it was a corporation of France, by the way. USA Inc. is a domicile within the 10 square miles of Washington, District of Columbia. Most people know that. And has absolutely no lawful authority, jurisdiction, or lawful interstate nexus to within the United 50 states. Few American people realize that our 50-state union was covertly bankrupt and manipulated into an unlawful receivership without our knowledge and consent to the international criminal banking cartel that rules over us to this day. and the international criminal banking cartel is another name for Freemasons, Illuminati, Zionism, Jesuits, Vatican, witchcraft, Kabbalah, Hollywood crowd, elitist, deceiving we the people 24/7. The very mega banks that have now been fully exposed, even by their own admission in Main Street media, as complete criminals, own and control the private central bank, Federal Reserve. Remember, Alan Greenspan said before Congress, we're running a program called Creative Economic Destruction. Look it up. Don't believe me. And the senator said, whoa, this is a video of this, or a transcript you can get on the internet. Won't some people get hurt? And Jewish Alan Greenspan said, yes, some people will get hurt. And then they met Chernoff, whatever his name was, in charge of Homeland Security, another Jewish guy. These people are all Zionist Jewish people. Throughout history, they've been behind the scenes manipulating everything. Not to be confused with Jewish people who believe in God and who have been warning us. If you go on Zionism and images and you search it, you will see Jewish people protesting with posters and books. Rabbi Marvin Anelman to eliminate the opate. Opate means to believe in God, faith in God, which is like a drug. It makes people strong and confident. They want to eliminate your belief in God. In Christianity, the Jewish Zionism people hate it feverishly. And if you go on the jpost.com and just read some press releases, and then go scroll down like you can here in the United States press releases, jpost.com is the largest Israeli newspaper in Jerusalem, you will see the citizens' comments. Nasty and vicious indeed. Need not listen to me. Let's look at their own words. There is only a spider's web of about 185,000 interlinking Marxist, fascist corporations, and university over there in Switzerland did a study, and they had like 400 corporations pretty much rule the world. So these people, this guy says 185,000 interlinking, so 400 would be the total, deceiving, lying, and subjugating the American people as corporate debt slaves. And again, all that money that they say we owe was not spent on us, was outside forces controlling our country, borrowing it from their own Federal Reserve that they own overseas, and using that money to take over the world at the Americans' expense. So we really don't owe them money. We didn't borrow it. It wasn't spent on us. It was spent on their New World Order, but they're trying to predictive programming, make us think that we owe all that money. Alright, so they want people to think they're enemies of the, well, they think the people are the enemies of the corporate state. And they don't want to, they know that if they get caught, the people rise up. The last thing they want is armed people. Alright, let me see if there's any more comments I want to read here. Look up this document. I got pages and pages of comments. So people are going to have to pick a side. You know, the Christian, Jew, Jesus, believing God, or the New Age, skull and bones, Lucifer, satanic, get the mark of the beast chip thing. That's going to be the big decision people have to make. And each National Guard task force would be responsible for one of the 10 planned regions. So you can look this up. Zionist satraps of America. So they plan on dividing the country up into regions. Reminds me of Hunger Games, the movie. Alright, here's a couple notes on this one guy's comment. The satanic oligarchy advocates suicide for useless eaters, that people work for free. Remember, communism will be installed like Russia, like we just went over. You don't get paid for your work. So the only way you're going to get paid is if you do the work, and they're going to have you microchipped. makes being homeless, jobless, veteran, elderly, and hungry a crime. So if you don't have any ways to support yourself, you're a criminal, and you must report to the gas chamber. Is that what they're going to do? Ends food stamps for the poor, even though there are no jobs, no social safety net, which will result in the starvation of thousands of Americans, i.e. Russia, 66 million. With 1 in every 5 children now living in poverty, forcing the old back to work, while the young can find no jobs. So they will, of course, try to steal an apple or something and be shot. Stands by while the unprosecuted banking and economic crisis destroys the ability of cities and towns to protect their own citizens and fund their own police departments. Will police departments in many cities, will they be battling these military invaders from Russia and China or elsewhere? Mexicans, if they use them? What kind of deals are made in the background? United Nations troops, there are all those UN vehicles we see on trains, endless long, you can't see the end of the train. Stands by, okay, while the unprosecuted banking enables the invasion of Mexican drug cartels, allowing the cartels to traffic drugs in U.S. We got the CIA and everybody dealing in business with the drugs, and Russell family and all the other big families of the Illuminati use drugs for all their to get money. While they're supplying fast and furious guns to the Mexicans, they're going to have to confiscate guns. That might be the trigger there. The Department of Homeland Security buys billions of anti-personnel bullets while giving away tanks to U.S. cities and towns. Files soon to be weaponized drones. So they're going to be flying weaponized drones everywhere, all computerized control. So when anybody's spotted trying to run and hide, a nearby drone will swoop in and maybe shoot them. Allows Israel, a foreign country, to run U.S. NSA spying out of the Mormon Freemasonic cult, Utah. There we go again. Pre-positions military hardware in preparation for the coming U.S. meltdown. Fabricated U.S. meltdown. Like I keep saying, they could say the stock market can crash all day long. Rest of us can go about our business and use our cash to pay for our goods and people to work for us. We could work ourselves right out of these banking systems and take care of our society nicely if we were civilized and used our common sense. You can't run and hide and don't go pillage. Get together quickly in all the towns and everything, pile up all the cash and decide to use the cash as a buy here, pay here system. Everybody goes and does their job and everybody gets to buy whatever shares of food. And we can outwit these evil people. It's just paper. If it's good enough for us now, it's just paper. It's good enough when they crash the banks. What do we care if the banks close their doors? We could make our own money and everybody could go about their business in any city. And agriculture and farming and shoes and clothes and housing. We just have to help one another. Alright, prepositions. Buys thousands of FEMA coffins. They're anticipating, everybody's seen the pictures of the stacked up plastic coffins that can hold 3 bodies. Predictive programming. Alright, here's, so it's not just me, they're saying the Chinese are going to take over the USA. China, U.S. economy enemy, funds the so-called war on terror. So all this money they're spending to take over the world, they're borrowing from China. And saying the USA people are security and owe for that. I think we just need to yank out these gazillionaire billionaires and take their money and give it to China and let it go and get back to the way the United States was. It should be a growing, healthy, moral nation. Any U.S. soldier who follows or gives an order to enforce martial law or usurp the Constitution of rights of we the people has become an enemy soldier and an invader. That's why the U.S. Military Command is moving to an all-mercenary contractor service, recruiting criminals, foreigners, granting residency for their service. I think it was in the news 2 days ago. Hundreds of high-level prisoners were released. What's with that? Are they being recruited to be some of the invaders in our cities, to chaos and anarchy and mayhem and robbery and theft and murder and rape? Drug cartel members allowed across the border, recruited from the alien amnesty programs. These invaders will be more than willing to round up dissidents, massacre soccer moms on their way home from daycare. The chatter about ISIS being just across the border, just camps, cadres, and deep state recruits. Interestingly enough, is a picture here. It says here what they want us to think and what is really true. See if you can see this picture. But it shows a nice Mexican family, and then it shows some crazy-looking thugs. Look up this document if you can't see it. So, do they have all these crazy-looking people in training to come across the border? Do they? How do we know they don't? Which implies that Jade Helm is likely about making sure the borders will be wide open to let them in. So they plan on having swarms of people that are in training across the Mexican border right now. And are they these mercenary, insane people over there from the Middle East that they brought over? I doubt whether they will go door to door. More likely they will face off against any groups that would try to defend the border, which is where almost all the states in Jade Helm exercises are, except Utah. John says, I remember when the doctor in Mexico had enough of the cartels and fought back and retook several towns that made the government thugs look bad. Only fault is he trusted the thugs and gave up their arms. Defending your home makes people downright mean. This is my home. Yamamoto don't fear the American people Yamamoto don't fear the American military. He feared the American people. Israelis declare war on unarmed Palestinians who can't fight back. These cartels and most of the street thugs prey on unarmed and weaker victims like elderly and women. If some soccer moms were attacked, do you really think that the hoodlums would get a slap on the hand or a bus ticket? Like any invading force finds out the rewards aren't worth the risk, you certainly can't give up the guns. It's a constitutional right. So, and by the way, you know, when they make any laws that go against your constitutional rights, those laws are illegal. So they can't make laws that go against your constitutional rights or your Bill of Rights. If they do make a law that goes against your constitutional rights or your Bill of Rights, the law itself is illegal. And if you're in a jury, you have to find the person being charged innocent because the law was illegal. Just FYI. And pay attention to if they do drag you into a courtroom and there's a gold fringe, simply say, I do not recognize this court. Don't plead innocent or guilty. Don't even discuss your case. There is no case. You're not in a court that has any right over you. No constitutional right. They don't want you to know that. Rick Miracle reporting.